This is Coach Torrey with Fast Pitch Prep. Today on Fast Pitch Tutor, we're going to spend some time talking about sacrifice bunting. Sacrifice bunting is a very important skill that we all understand as coaches is valuable to our team and our team's success. And one of the things that I believe in as a coach is that it's important for us to have some key things, key points that we can talk to our players about that remind them of the fundamental pieces that we need to execute to be successful with this skill. So we spend a lot of time with our players talking about the letter P. And the letter P is easy for us to use in bunting because it's a lot of different things that we ask our players to do all start with the letter P. So the first P that we talk about is positioning. Positioning is crucial in a sacrifice situation. We want to try to position ourselves to make sure that we are making contact with the ball in front of home plate. The further out in front of home plate I am, the greater chance it gives me to successfully get the ball down in fair territory. So for me, positioning is the first P. I'm going to always make sure that I position myself in relationship to home plate so that when I square around to put the ball in play, that I'm going to have as much of the field to work with as possible. So the first P is positioning. Second P that we talk about is how we get into position to bunt, how we move our body to be in a good athletic position to bunt from. We believe in something we call angle bunting. Some people call it pivot bunting. It doesn't really matter, but for us, angle bunting is important because it builds a foundation of other things that we can do besides sacrifice bunt. But I also think it's a very simple way for us to get our players into a really good athletic position and allow them to be successful executing a sacrifice. So, from my normal position, my normal hitting stance, I've positioned myself in the front of the batter's box again to give myself as much fair territory as possible. And the first thing that we talk about is pivoting. So my body is going to pivot. My feet are going to pivot to turn my body to be facing the pitcher. So both feet pivot. When I get into this pivoted position, I want to make sure I've got some bend in both knees, a little bit of bend at the waist, a good athletic position. And I like to have my toes pointed fairly closely straight towards the pitcher. We might have a little angle, and that's okay too, but we want to make sure that my body's gotten turned to the point where I can get my shoulders and my chest square to the pitcher so that I'm facing her straight on, looking at her with both eyes. So the first P is pivot. The second P is part of how we use our body and get our body into a position to get the bat where we want it to be to again give us the highest likelihood of success with a sacrifice bunt. So while I'm pivoting, my bottom hand pulls the bat down away from my top hand. So I pivot and pull. Pivot and pull. The reason I will do that is I believe that having my hands apart gives me better control. And right now for the sacrifice bunt, I want to have barrel control because I want to make sure I get the ball down fairly. It's not important for me to do anything else in this situation but execute getting that ball down in fair territory to move another runner. So I pivot and pull at the same time. The third P for us is what we call push. The push is what my top hand does while my bottom hand pulls. My body pivots, bottom hand pulls, top hand pushes so that the bat gets away from my body. A big mistake we see with a lot of kids when they try to bunt is the bat is really close to their body and really close to their frame, and it really negatively impacts our vision and our ability to see the bat and the ball at the same time. So we want to pivot, pull, push, all at one time while my body's getting into that good position. Now, when I pivot my feet, I want to make sure that my feet are in a good athletic position, so I've got a little bit of space, a little bit of distance, so I don't feel like I'm standing on a balance beam, so I'm in a good, strong athletic position. Bat's out front. I've done the 3 Ps to get to this position. We want to make sure we've got a little bit of bend in the arms, and both of my elbows should be pointed downward. Bat's at the top of the strike zone. But with that pivot, push, pull, those 3 Ps get me into that good position all in one smooth movement. Now, what I want to always emphasize with our players is that the bat needs to start at the top of the strike zone. When I pivot, push, pull, if the bat's at the top of the strike zone, now that eliminates anything that's above the bat. If it's above the bat, I know it's a ball, and I'm not going to offer it that pitch. If I see it above the barrel, I'm going to pull the barrel back and just let that ball go by. The pivot, push, pull is a really good way for us to remind our players because they understand the 3 Ps of good, successful bunting. Pivot, push, pull, bat at the top of the strike zone. I want to make sure that the bat's out far enough away from my body so that my eyes can see the bat and the ball as it approaches me in the same frame. Again, the closer the bat gets back here, the harder it is for me to see the bat and the ball together, and I have to start doing all kinds of figuring of angles and all these things that are really more complicated than I want them to be. So pivot, push, pull, that's at the top of the strike zone. Now, if the ball's below the bat, the technique we want to use is we want to lower our entire body until we get down to the point where the ball's no longer in the strike zone because we've gotten to the bottom of the strike zone, and we're going to pull the bat back. So the pivot, push, pull gets me out there in that good, strong position where I want to be. From there, I see the bat and the ball come together. If the ball's towards the top of the strike zone, it's real easy. I'm in a really good position to execute that bunt. But if it's not, I'm going to lower my entire body down until I get to the bottom of the strike zone. And again, then I'll pull the bat back. Second thing that we see a lot of bad bunters or kids that struggle with bunting, besides the bat being close, they start off in a really good position, but then when the ball is lower, they just drop the bat head. And again, now we've got to do all kinds of geometry. And to me, that's a very difficult thing. You hear some people talk about when I'm bunting the ball, all I'm really doing is catching the ball with the bat. I have a much better chance of catching the ball with the bat if I can see the ball and the bat in the same frame. So, one last time, positioning, going to be in front of the batter's box, out in front of home plate, so I give myself the better opportunity to get the ball down in fair territory. And the 3 P's are pivot, push, pull, and all the way down if I need to. So that's angle bunting the way we think it should be done. Thank you very much for your time.